In the heart of a war-torn city, a ghost named Omar reigned with an iron fist. A specter of terror, he moved through the shattered remains of the once vibrant metropolis, his name whispered in hushed tones of dread and reluctant admiration. He had toppled governments, carved a kingdom from the ruins, all while being driven by an icy wrath that defied comprehension. Yet, Omar, the ghost, was a creature of habit. Every victory was ritualized, each execution a meticulously orchestrated spectacle. A pattern emerged, a rhythm of habitual violence that became his signature. This predictability, however, was a double-edged sword. It was noticed by Nadia, a young woman who had lost her parents to his ruthless reign. She saw a chink in his armor, a flicker of fear, a twitch before the final order was given, a flaw that could be exploited. Nadia was no soldier. She was a different kind of phantom, an artist lost amidst the chaos, using the bombed-out buildings as her canvas. Her art was a vibrant tapestry of raw emotions that resonated with the city's weary heart. Gradually, she began weaving messages into her murals. Stories of the lives he had stolen, dreams he had shattered. Omar, the control freak, saw these murals as a challenge to his authority. He sent his men to obliterate them, but the city, moved by Nadia's art, preserved them. The public defiance ignited his fury. He wouldn't tolerate being questioned, being mocked. But in the ruins of the National Museum, he found Nadia, her hands marked with paint rather than blood. There was no fear in her eyes as he approached, only a reflection of the pain he had inflicted on countless others. Omar's reign of terror, it seemed, was not without its flaws. His predictable patterns had unwittingly given Nadia a weapon to wield against him. A weapon not of steel or bullets, but of art, of memory, of defiance. His reign, however, was not without its flaws. Nadia, an artist in the city's rubble, saw the cracks in Omar's armor. Amidst the chaos and despair, she was a beacon of resilience, a woman who painted her pain onto the broken walls of their homeland. Her parents' unjust demise at the hands of Omar had ignited a fire in her, a fire that burnt brighter every day. She was no warrior. Her weapon was her paintbrush, her battlefield, the tattered walls of the city. Each stroke was a testament to her resilience, each mural a mirror reflecting the city's suffering. But it was more than just an outlet for her grief. She was painting the story of her city, the story Omar wanted to bury under the rubble. Nadia was observant, a necessary trait for an artist. She noticed the rituals, the patterns in Omar's violence. She saw the fear that lurked in his eyes, the twitch of his lips before he gave the final order. It was a vulnerability, a human frailty that was out of place in the monster that was Omar. She decided to use her art to expose this chink in his armor. She began to weave messages into her murals, faces of the victims, dreams that had been crushed, lives that had been stolen. The city started to notice, to whisper. The murals were no longer just art, they were a voice for the silenced, a challenge to Omar's reign. Omar was not blind to this defiance. His rage was understandable. He was a tyrant accustomed to unchallenged authority. The murals were a direct challenge to his rule, a public display of defiance. He sent his men to erase them. But the city, moved by Nadia's art, protected them. Nadia's art became a beacon of defiance, provoking Omar's rage. But she wasn't afraid. She was ready. She had turned Omar's own habits against him, using her art to expose his vulnerabilities. She had stirred the city, given them a voice. She was prepared for the storm that was to come. She was ready to face Omar the ghost. In the ruins of the National Museum, Omar found Nadia, her hands stained with paint instead of blood. The air was thick with tension, a silent standoff between a merciless killer and a resolute artist. The echo of her defiance, her art, filled the air around them. They were two ghosts, born from the same city's suffering, but molded by different choices. Omar towered over her, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of the crumbling museum. His eyes, usually empty of emotion, held a glint of uncertainty. "You think your colors can change anything?" he sneered, his voice echoing through the ruins. His gun, a symbol of his reign of terror, gleamed ominously in his hand. Nadia, however, did not flinch. She stood her ground, her eyes never leaving his. Her voice, when it came, was soft yet unwavering. "I don't paint to change you, Omar," she said, her voice echoing through the ruins. "I paint to remember those you've forgotten." Her words were a challenge, a mirror held up to his face, reflecting the monster he had become. There was a moment of charged silence, the world holding its breath. Omar's finger tightened on the trigger, a movement as familiar to him as breathing. But this time it faltered. His gaze shifted from her to the mural behind her, the faces of his victims staring back at him. Doubt, a feeling he'd never known, surged within him, a viper striking at his confidence. For the first time, Omar, the ghost, was haunted by doubt. His gun wavered, then dropped to his side. His reign, his invincibility, all seemed to crumble before this brave woman and her art. He was no longer the ghost, the terror of the city. He was just Omar, a man lost in the labyrinth of his own violence. Nadia watched him, her defiance replaced with a strange sense of pity. She turned and walked away, leaving Omar alone among the ruins. The echoes of her words and the accusing eyes of the mural were his only company, a haunting reminder of the monster he had become. Nadia left Omar alone among the ruins, his reign crumbling under the weight of his past. The once feared ghost, stripped of his spectral cloak, stood vulnerable under the city's silent judgment. His world, once marked by the rhythm of violence, now echoed with the whispers of his deeds. Omar, the terror of the city, had been broken, not by the might of an army, but by the soft strokes of an artist's brush and the quiet defiance of a broken heart. It was a fall as dramatic as it was unexpected. A powerful figure brought to his knees, not by force, but by the revelation of his own humanity. His reign of terror had been marked by a habitual violence, a dance of death choreographed to the beat of his own rage. But now the music had stopped. The stage was empty. The audience had left, their applause replaced by the haunting silence of judgment. Omar was no longer the puppet master, pulling the strings of his marionettes of destruction. He was just a man, alone in the ruins of his own making. His power, once so absolute, had been reduced to dust, swept away by the winds of change. His armor of invincibility was shattered, exposing the raw wounds of regret. The faces of those he'd hurt, those he'd taken from the world, haunted him. Their silent screams echoed in his ears, a cacophony of accusation that drowned out the echoes of his former glory. Nadia's strength had been his downfall. Her art, a mirror reflecting the horror of his reign, had shattered his illusions. Her defiance, as soft as a whisper yet as powerful as a storm, had toppled his empire. His reign was over, his power gone, his legacy a chilling reminder of the destructive path he'd chosen. But in his fall, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, for change, a chance for the city to heal, to rebuild, to rise from the ashes. Omar, the ghost, had been conquered by the quiet defiance of a single broken heart. His fall was not a victory of violence, but a triumph of the human spirit, a testament to the power of resilience, of art, and of the indomitable strength of a single broken heart.